हेलो फ्रेंड्स, वेलकम टू आवर यूट्यूब चैनल कॉल फॉर नॉलेज। आज हम लोग घटना चक्र सीरीज का मॉडर्न इंडियन हिस्ट्री का 5th चैप्टर इकोनॉमिक इम्पैक्ट ऑफ ब्रिटिश रूल ऑन इंडिया ये डिस्कस करने जा रहे हैं। इसमें जो भी स्टार्टिंग का है हम लोग ये नहीं देखते हुए सीधा क्वेश्चन आंसर पर चलते हैं, क्योंकि क्वेश्चन करते करते डिस्क्रिप्शन में ही हम उसका आंसर देख लेते हैं, नहीं तो वो रिपीटिशन हो जाता है, 2 बार हमें करना पड़ता है। तो ठीक है, फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन देखते हैं। With the reference to the period of colonial rule in India, home charges formed an important part of the drain of wealth from India. Which of the following fund constituted home charge? ये क्वेश्चन आईएएस प्री 2011 में पूछा गया है, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन है। देखते हैं हम लोग इसका आंसर। फंड्स यूज्ड टू सपोर्ट द इंडियन ऑफिशियल इन लंदन, क्या ये सही है? नहीं। फंड यूज टू पे द सैलरी एंड द पेंशन ऑफ द ब्रिटिश पर्सनल इंगेज्ड इन इंडिया, यस। एंड फंड यूज्ड फॉर वेजिंग वॉर आउटसाइड द इंडिया बाय द ब्रिटिश। सो इसका आंसर है इसका आंसर है 1 and 2 बोथ। होम चार्ज, अब इसका डिस्क्रिप्शन देखते हैं। होम चार्जेस रिफर टू द एक्सपेंडिचर इंक्योर्ड इन इंग्लैंड बाय द सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट ऑन द बिहाफ ऑफ इंडियन गवर्नमेंट। होम चार्जेस कंसिस्टेड ऑफ परचेज ऑफ मिलिट्री स्टोर, expenditure on the Indian office establishment, interest on debt, interest on railway capital investment, non-effective charge of the army, pension and gratuity payable in the England to the retired civil servant of the company, fund used for waging war outside the India by the British were not included in the home charge। तो जो इसमें ये था कि फंड यूज्ड फॉर वेजिंग वॉर आउटसाइड इंडिया बाय द ब्रिटिश, इसमें नहीं कर सकते थे, बाकी ये सारे हैं। हाँ, नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन देखते हैं हम लोग। द स्टेपल कमोडिटी ऑफ एक्सपोर्ट बाय द इंग्लिश ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी फ्रॉम द बंगाल मिडिल ऑफ 18th सेंचुरी वो क्या क्या था? कॉटन, सिल्क, साल्ट, peter and opium. By the late 17th century and early 18th century, Bengal had begun to emerge and the essential source of supply that East India Company could purchase for sale in Europe. Goods purchased from Bengal include cotton, cloth, opium, salt, peter, sugar and silk. Next question, the term imperial preference was applied to the, ये सारे क्वेश्चन आईएएस में पूछे गए हैं। स्पेशल प्रिविलेज ऑन द ब्रिटिश इम्पोर्ट इन इंडिया, द टर्म imperial preference was applied for the special privileges on the British import in India. Based on this, the privilege nominal duty was paid on the British import in India, while India export paid high duty on Britain. Next question, there was no independent development of industries in India during the British rule because of the preference of the rich to invest in the land. During the British rule, preference was given to the invest in the land by wealthy class is the reason for no independent development for industry. Next question, economically, one of the results of the British rule in India in late 19th century was commercialization of Indian agriculture. ये आईएएस प्री 2018 में पूछा गया है। कमर्शियलाइजेशन ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर वाज द रिजल्ट ऑफ द ब्रिटिश रूल इन इंडिया इन 19th century. Farmers were forced to grow cash crops which were imported to the Great Britain as raw materials of English factories. The period also saw the decline in urban population and destroyed domestic factories. Indians started producing crops for commercial use on the large scale. 19th century, agriculture became the commercial due to the use of the modern agriculture equipment. British rulers forced the farmers to grow the indigo and other cash crop which can be used as the raw material for British manufacture. As a result of the urban population produced, the domestic industries were destroyed. Next question. Which of the following statement correctly explain the impact of industrial revolution on India during the first half of 19th century? ये भी IS Pre 2020 का क्वेश्चन है. The Indian handicraft were ruined. During the first half of 19th century, British policy were turned India as the exporter of the raw material and consumer of the finished product. Also, because of the industrial revolution in Britain, new machines were invented which were used to make handicraft products which were not just a cheap but also a good quality, which lead to the downfall in the demand of the Indian handicraft products in domestic market too. Already they were unable to sell Indian good at the Britain because of the high tariffs. All this led to the ruin of Indian handicrafts. Who introduced Iste-Marari settlement? Lord Cornwallis. The permanent settlement 1793 introduced by Lord Cornwallis, also known as Permanent Settlement of Bengal, was an agreement between the East India Company and Bengali landlords to fix the revenue to be raised from the land. It was also known as Iste-Madari, Jagirdari, Malguzari, and Biswedari etc. Permanent settlement of Bengal stood the following feature. It recognized the landlords as the proprietors of the land. It also recognized the right of the hereditary successor or lawful successors of the landlord. The government believed that these landlords would remain faithful to the British. The landlords were given the right to transfer and sell their lands. All the right of the landlords depend on their payment of the fixed revenue on the fixed date at the treasury of government. All their rights ended if they failed to pay. The total amount of revenue to be paid each landlord for his jamindari and fixed once for all. It was agreed that the tax rate would not increase in the future. Next question. Given below the two statements, one is labeled as assertion and other is reason. Assertion: the British government introduced the different land revenue system in the different part of India. Correct है? And it led to create a different classes in Indian peasantry. Both are the correct. British government followed the different land revenue system in the different part of India. These system are permanent settlement, Raiyatwari settlement, Mahanwali settlement. Permanent settlement was introduced in Bengal, Bihar, Orissa, Varanasi of UP. Under the system, 90% of area of entire British India was included. Raiyatwari, approx 51% of area system it was in Madras, also some part of Mumbai, Eastern Bengal, Assam and Coorg. Mahalwadi, 30% area, and the system was in UP, central provinces of Punjab. Hence clear, because of this different class was created in Indian peasantry. तो जो सबसे ज्यादा था वो रैयतवाड़ी सेटलमेंट में एरिया यूज होता था. ये भी क्वेश्चन आता है. परमानेंट सेटलमेंट was introduced by Lord Cornwallis. Permanent settlement was made with the landlords. Permanent settlement was made with the landlords, jamindar, which Governor General introduced the permanent land revenue system in India. Cornwallis. Permanent settlement, Lord Cornwallis was introduced in the year 1793. The tendency for increase the litigation was visible after the introduction of land settlement system of Lord Cornwallis in 1793. The reason for this is normally traced to which of the following provision? So, making jamindar position stronger via the Royal? No. Making East India Company or overload of the jamindar? No. Making judicial system more efficient? No. Next question. Under the permanent settlement 1793, the jamindars were required to issue a patta to the farmers, and which were not issued by the many jamindar, and the reason was there were no officials to check upon the jamindar. The reason for not issuing patta by many jamindar was there were no officials to take jamindar in permanent settlement of 1793. They were only required to give 10 by 11th 89% part of the revenue collection to the officials. Which of the following is the correct about the permanent settlement introduced in Bihar? Land revenue was constitutionalized. ये 4852 BPSC 2008 का क्वेश्चन है. इन बिहार द परमानेंट सेटलमेंट सिस्टम इंश्योर टू फिक्स अमाउंट ऑफ रेवेन्यू फॉर द कंपनी. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन, परमानेंट सेटलमेंट एंड द रैयतवाड़ी सिस्टम ऑफ द लैंड रेवेन्यू इंट्रोड्यूस्ड रेस्पेक्टिवली इन Bengal and Madras. Permanent settlement were introduced Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, Varanasi, UP, while Rayatwadi settlement Madras, some part of Mumbai, Eastern Bengal, Assam and Coorg. In 1885, the rights of the tenant land in the Bengal, Bihar were given by the Bengal Tenancy Act. 1793, the Lord Cornwallis introduced permanent settlement, which in turn provided the many right to the landlord. In 19th century, the demand for the land increased, hence the landlord increased and the rent of the land, which resulted in the revolt by peasants. During this time, the government of Bengal introduced the Bengal Bihar Tenancy Act 1885, which described the land rights of landlord and tenants. Sir Thomas Munro associated with the land revenue settlement. Rayatwadi settlement. Rayatwadi system was the second system collection of land revenue after the permanent settlement. Thomas Munro and Captain Reed, who were the founders of this system, first introduced in Baramahal district, Tamil Nadu. After this system was introduced in Madras, Eastern Bengal, Assam, Coorg and some area of Bombay. In Rayatwadi system, ownership rights were transferred to the peasant and British government collected the tax directly from the peasant. 51% of area occupied were introduced in this system, and a high rate of tax during the collection became significant cause of a struggle between the moneylender and the peasant. Who were associated with the Rayatwadi settlement? Munro. Who started Rayatwadi settlement? Thomas Munro. The Rayatwadi settlement were introduced by the British in Madras, Bombay and Bombay Presidency. The English introduced Rayatwadi settlement for the first time Madras Presidency. Rayatwadi system method of revenue collection in British India. It was prevalent most southern India. A standard system of Madras Presidency. This system was devised by Alexander Reed, Thomas Munro. It was introduced by Thomas Munro 1820 to 27 when was the governor of Madras. The British system of Rayatwadi land revenue collection was prevalent in southern India and western India. Next question. With the reference to the Rayatwadi settlement, consider the following statement. The rent was paid directly by the peasant to the government. ये भी क्वेश्चन IAS प्री 2012 में पूछा गया है. इस चैप्टर से बहुत सारा क्वेश्चंस यूपीएससी के लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, IAS में पूछा गया है. और बाकी जो ऐसा क्वेश्चन है कि परमानेंट सेटलमेंट कहाँ इंट्रोड्यूस किया गया, उसके बाद रैयतवाड़ी कहाँ किया गया, महलवाड़ी कहाँ किया गया, ये सब एकदम याद होना चाहिए क्योंकि ये सब स्टेट के लिए बहुत ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है. और किस एरिया में किया गया और डेट क्या है. With the reference to the Rayatwadi settlement, consider the following statement. The rent was paid directly by the peasant to the government. Rayatwadi, ये correct. The government gave patta to the Rayat, correct, and the land was surveyed and assessed before being taxed, correct. So all the options जो हैं सारे correct हैं. Thomas Munro introduced Rayatwadi settlement in 1820 and the major area included Madras, Bombay and some part of Assam. Rayatwadi system, the ownership right were handed over to the peasant. British government collected tax directly from the peasant and the revenue rate of Rayatwadi system was 50% where the land rate dry and 60% irrigated land. With the reference to the history of India, consider the following pairs. Anurang, in charge of the treasury of the state. Banian, Indian agent of the East India Company. And Mirasidar, designated the revenue payer to the state. IST 2020 का question है, तो 2 and 3 is the right. Anurang is the Persian term for a warehouse, a place where the goods are collected before being sold. And Banian was an Indian agent for East India Company who performed the commercial function. And Mirasidar were the village elites in South India, were often belonging to the high castes, and they asserted ownership over the entire village land and under them the farmers and workers. In Rayatwadi system, they were made designated the revenue payer to the state. When was first time company in Assam established? 1839. The Assam Company was formed in England in 1839 with the capital of rupees 5 lakh, and the Assam Company with its headquarters in Nazira in Assam is the oldest tea company of Assam which is still functioning. Next question, which one of the following statement correctly define the term drain theory as propounded by दादाभाई नौरोजी? जो drain theory है ये दादाभाई नौरोजी ने दिया था और इसमें पूछ रहा है कि करेक्टली डिफाइन क्या है, किसको बोलते हैं? that a part of Indian national wealth or total annual product was being exported to the British for the Indian got no material return. Dadabhai Naoroji, known as the Grand Old Man of India, and focused on the drain of the wealth from India to England through the colonial rule. One reason that drain theory is attributed to Naoroji was his decision to estimate the national net profit of India. Dadabhai Naoroji gave some factor called the external drain. These were external rule and administration in India. All the civil administration and army expenses Britain were paid by India. A part of Indian national wealth was transferred to England, for which the India got no return, and India was bearing the burden of the territory building both inside and outside India. Who was the exponent theory of the economic drain of India during the British rule? Dadabhai Naoroji. Next question, with the reference to the deindustrialization, which of the following statement is correct? The process started in 1813. Yes, the abolition of monopoly trade right of East India Company aggraved the process. Both the option is correct. In India, deindustrialization started in 1813. The company's commercial monopoly came to an end. Export for the tea and the opium trade with China, with the enforcement of the St. Helena Act 1813, also known as the Government of India Act 1833, process, the deindustrialization was aggraved as it ended activity of the British East India Company as a trade body. It became purely administrative body. In particular, company lost its monopoly on the trade with China and other part of East. Which of the following propounded the drain theory? Dadabhai Naoroji. Who of the following were the economic critique of the colonialism in India? Dadabhai Naoroji, yes. G. Subramaniam Iyer, R.C. Datta, yes. ये सारे बोले हैं इकोनॉमिक ड्रेन थ्योरी के बारे में. During the 1870 to 1905, many Indian intellectuals analyzed the economic aspect of the British rule in India, namely Dadabhai Naoroji, Govind Ranade, and ICS officer Ramesh Chandra Dutt, and they wrote the economic history of India, and many other intellectuals who analyzed the economic of India like G.V. Joshi, G. Subramaniam Iyer, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Prithvi Chandra Rai, etc. They finally reached the conclusion that the colonialism was the main hurdle toward the economic growth of India. Who among the following leaders did not believe in the drain theory of Dadabhai Naoroji? Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan was loyal to the British, and he felt that the development of the Muslim was only possible under the colonial rule. So he did not believe the drain theory of Dadabhai Naoroji. Who authored the book Poverty and Un-British Rule in India? Dadabhai Naoroji. Dadabhai Naoroji with Womesh Chandra Banerjee established the London Indian Society in 1865, and main purpose of which was to expose the Indian plight. He was the first Indian who was elected to the British House of Commons on the ticket of Liberal Party. He directly highlighted the economic predicament and propounded the drain of wealth theory, and firstly his short book Poverty and Un-British Rule of India. Next question, who wrote the book describing the theory of economic drain of India during the British rule? Dadabhai Naoroji. Consider the following statement. The most effective contribution made by Dadabhai Naoroji to causes the Indian national movement was that expose the economic exploitation of Indian by the British. And Dadabhai Naoroji was the first Indian nationalist who, after deep research and analysis, proved that the Britain was exploiting the Indian economically and every year definite amount money had been transferred to England. He introduced his drain theory based on this analysis. The last question for this chapter is consider the following statement and select the correct answers from the code given below. The statement: assertion, generally India had a favorable balance of trade during the British rule and region. The drain of wealth took the form of unrequired export. So both A and R is true, and R is the correct explanation of A. The constant flow of wealth from England, for which the India did not get adequate economic and commercial or material return, has been described by the national leader and economist and drain of the wealth from India. Before 1813, company had reoccurring surplus, which was assured a profit from oppressive land revenue policy. The profit from its trade resulting from monopolistic control over the Indian market and extraction and made the company officials. All the surplus was used by the company as an investment, that is for making the purchase of exportable item India and elsewhere. Against the export of good made out of this statement, India did not get anything in return. This system was brought to an end Charter Act of 1813. From 1813 onward, economic drain took the form of unrequited export, bearing a few exceptional year. A favorable balance of trade had been a normal feature of our foreign trade till the outbreak of World War II. So friends, this is नहीं एक और क्वेश्चन, हाँ एक और क्वेश्चन है. Who is considered the British economic policy disgusting in India? Karl Marx. Karl Marx expressed that the British economic policy in India were disgusting. English interference having placed the Spiner and Landseer and weavers in Bengal are thus sweeping away both Hindu spinner and weaver and dissolved these small and semi-barbarian, semi-civilized community by blowing up their economic basis, thus produced the greatest social revolution in Asia. This is the last question for this chapter. What is the total percentage of the central revenue spent on the military force in the British India? 40%. The total percentage of central revenue spent on the military force in British India was 40%. सो फ्रेंड्स, ये हमारा वीडियो था इकोनॉमिक इम्पैक्ट ऑफ ब्रिटिश इंडिया. इसमें हमने देखा कि बहुत सारा क्वेश्चंस जो है जो आईएएस के लिए पूछा गया है, जो कि जैसे अन ब्रिटिश रूल इन इंडिया और दादा भाई नौरोजी का, और जो एकदम डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन है जो स्टेट पीसीएस के लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, वो आपको याद करना पड़ेगा. तो अगर आपको ये वीडियो अच्छा लगे तो प्लीज़ इस चैनल को लाइक कीजिए, सब्सक्राइब कीजिए, और अगर अच्छा लगे तो कमेंट कीजिए. थैंक्स फॉर वॉचिंग.